So welcome to the sixth and final area of mastery. This is perceptual mastery. Orange is a mixture of yellow and red. The perceptual mastery is a mixture of mental mastery and physical mastery, meaning you have to have a understanding of certain mental models, but also you have to have the physical discipline to sit and reflect, and you'll see that that is reflected in practices such as meditation and stuff we're going to talk about here. All right, so the first concept in perceptual mastery is understanding what I call the in-between. The in-between is this area of life which actually makes up all of life, which is something known as the present, the now. So there's a book, I bought it, but I have not yet read it. It's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. But basically, all of life is a compilation of nows. It's a compilation of moments, right? There is technically no tomorrow, and there was technically no past. It is just nows. And ironically, if you remember your past, your most cherished memory, the memory you keep bringing back forward and forward, that is actually your most altered memory, because every time you bring things back, in recall, you lose a bit of it. So there's technically no past, no future. There's only moments of now, right? But if you operate from that standpoint too much, you can actually just destroy your life. You can really head into hedonism and just focus on pleasure and avoiding pain. So you do have to operate using things such as time, which is abstract, and focus on simple terms, which for this module, we're going to focus on the moments between point A and point B. So let's get into it. So these concepts are pretty philosophical. They get into metaphysics a bit, but I wanted to make them a bit short, but they're very intense. So we're going to talk about something I call the point B syndrome, shared delusions, hypnosis, synchronicity exercises, and how to identify an NPC. So quick disclaimer is that the content on these slides is for entertainment purposes only. It is not cool nor morally correct to ambush somebody who's not perceptually mature enough to digest these ideas. Ignorance is bliss. What is useful is more important than what is true. Allow people the grace and the space to live in ignorance, to live in peace. You do not want to be abusive and just start overwhelming people with certain ideas. It's not cool, okay? Because what is an idea? An idea, it's actually one of the most cancerous things in existence because you can't remove an idea. When you plant the seed of an idea to someone's mind and they're not ready, it can do tremendous damage to people. So most people actually don't even think. Like, most people are incapable of actually thinking, because if you introduce an idea that's a bit novel, like very radical and particularly damaging to someone's identity, they don't even consider it. They don't analyze it, not even 2%. So it's not a big deal for most people, but if there's someone who's a bit perceptually or spiritually weak and you start telling them what I'm about to tell you, then you can do some psychological damage to people. So don't do that. Reason is a gift. Don't abuse it. So what am I talking about when I say the in-between? In-between what? If you truly want to discuss an issue, you have to start by defining the terms. So in-between what? What are we talking about? So what I mean is people that are just transient. And you'll notice that the vast majority of people, they're just focused on point B. They're in point A right now, and they're like, all right, I am in my car, right? And then they're just focusing on the office. They're just focusing on things they need to do. And when they get to the office, they're just focusing on lunch. And when they get to lunch, they're just focusing on the work. And when they get back to the office, they're just focusing on their commute. They're never, ever living in the present moment. So I've called this point B syndrome. They're just consistently living away from themselves. They remember in the intellectual modules, we talked about the biggest mental crutch, which is disassociation. To be able to dissociate from moment to moment, that's fine. Okay, it's actually pretty powerful if you really need to just do it. But it's actually much more powerful to focus and be fully present. So most people live in the zombie state. They're consistently not present, because if they were present, then they would have to feel fully. And maybe they're not happy with where they are with their job, with their family, with their choices. So a lot of these people, they disassociate. And one of the most common and socially acceptable ways to disassociate is through alcohol, right? So this is what I call point B syndrome. You do not want to get here. But ironically enough, both your employer, especially your employer, and the government, they want a sea of taxable people that are just disassociated, that they don't question things. They don't want a bunch of self-autonomous, sovereign individuals who can pay for themselves, make their own money, and can travel, right? They don't want that. So they want you to be completely dependent on them. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to kill your spirit. And how can one kill their own spirit? Is by drinking. And how do they get people to willingly tap into that? Is through culture. They make it seem cool to get absolutely fucked up all the time and to do stuff that you don't care about. People are so focused on what's next, they don't actually live in the now, which is technically the only thing that exists. This is the worst way to live because you're robbing yourself of actually living life because your present is too painful for you to feel. So what happens when everyone is a bit checked out? What happens when everyone's constantly choosing to disassociate? What's going on? It is very easy to introduce delusions, and everyone is just lying to themselves and therefore each other. And there are common delusions, shared delusions that everyone has. So let's get into how to get out of those. Well, the first thing is that you need to recognize that most people are in a state of hypnosis. And most people are familiar with stage hypnosis, where you have someone like tell people to get into silly positions, whatever, and they don't think it's real. Hypnosis is actually a state of mind. It's a legitimate field of psychology and clinical practice. So hypnosis and hypnotherapy has actually been used for over 4,000 years. Hypnotherapy is legitimate clinical treatment. And as you can see, if you compare hypnotherapy to behavioral therapy or psychoanalysis, it's 93% effective when it comes to recovery of their patients. So what is hypnotherapy? What is a hypnotic state? It is a state where you're hyper suggestible. In fact, on the bottom right there, you can see a picture of Dr. David Spiegel, who's the director of the Center of Integrative Medicine at Stanford University, hypnotizing Dr. Andrew Huberman. I know a lot of you guys are familiar with Huberman, but you can watch the videos. He puts him under. Dr. Spiegel puts Andrew Huberman under, and he's in the state of hypnosis. So basically, I just wanted to say that this is not woo-woo. So I've actually taught myself how to do hypnosis. There's a book right there I bought by Dave Ellman, and hypnosis is actually a moment. It's a state of altered consciousness where you are much more easily to manipulate. Basically, it's very easy to implant those seeds we're talking about into your mind and to accept certain things. A lot of people who take on hypnotherapy are people who suffer from anxiety. This actually gives them a lot of relief. So the power of hypnosis lies in its potential to influence thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So some of the key aspects of the power of hypnosis are altered states of consciousness, because it induces a state of focused attention and relaxation. In this state, individuals may become more open to suggestions. Also, like we said, you get enhanced suggestibility. This is key for therapists to drive certain points home. It's also used for pain management, behavioral changes, memory recall, and psychological explorations to get really deep into childhood trauma and stuff like that. But it's a legitimate field of medicine. And technically, I should not have been putting people under, but I taught myself and I got consent from my friends. And so if you're interested in doing this, you should go to a board certified person who has a license to do this, but it's legit. And the most important thing I want you guys to take away from this is that it is an actual state of consciousness, and you need to be aware of that. Why should one be aware of it? Because now that you know that when people are under hypnosis, they can be very suggestible. It's very easy to plant ideas into their minds. And so you'll see there's a certain cadence. Like when I read the book of hypnotherapy, they talk about this cadence in your voice, a certain way you speak. And guess who speaks in that cadence? Every news anchor on the news worldwide, they speak in this cadence. They make you relax. And so maybe out of a full hour of news coverage, maybe 50 minutes is actual news, and then 10 minutes throughout the whole segment, they're planting suggestible seeds into your brain. So you're sitting there as 2 generations, 3 generations of family consuming this network television, network marketing, network messaging that is literally putting generations under mass hypnosis. And so you'll see ridiculous things like a man by himself in a car, windows down, with a mask on, right? Like you've seen insane things that go against science, but because people have been so open to suggestibility, they do not question things. Now, many powerful people have studied how to weaponize hypnosis, how to capture people. And really, like if you could own the psychological power of an entire nation, you can mobilize them without much effort. You can get people to hand you money to fund certain missions for certain incentives without really convincing them, because you've been peppering in your messaging for generations. So a lot of organizations have studied how to use hypnosis, one of which is the Black Sun on the bottom right there, the CIA. Different types of people and organizations have learned how to manipulate and use hypnosis. So the main message with the slide is to remind people that a lot of your friends and family have been hypnotized. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but this is an actual agenda item for many countries and many organizations. All right, so pop quiz. We're going to do a quick little test here. We're going to have some fun. So right now, I want you to take your phone and open up your front-facing camera. Once you have that set up, make sure it's facing directly in front of your face. So it's the front camera for your video, and have it set up right in front of your face, and start recording. Now, while it's recording, hold your head looking straight forward at the camera, and while you're holding your head in that position, look upward towards your eyebrows. Now, without moving your face, just your eyes. Look up towards your eyebrows, and now look up towards your head. While continuing to look up, at the same time, close your eyelids slowly. Now, open your eyes and let your eyes come back to normal focus, okay? Now, let's end the video now, and let's take a look at that video. So the test you just did is called the Spiegel eye roll test. It's going to tell you how hypnotizable you are. And although there are many hypnotic susceptibility tests, including the Stanford test, the Harvard test, and the Capsian test, this test you just did is the single quickest physical test to see how hypnotizable someone is. If you recall in the last social mastery modules, we talked about how to identify a psychopath. One of the key factors is how much sclera they're showing in their eyes, so the whites of their eyes on top of the iris. So this kind of looks for that also. It is set up on a scale. So we're actually going to look at the amount of sclera visible between the lower eyelid and the lower edge of your cornea. This test correlates highly with hypnotic's trance capacity. 74% likelihood to accurately judge whether you're hypnotizable or not. So 74%. So it's kind of like an internal trust thing. I am not hypnotizable. I've done this many times, and you can still see my iris. No matter who's talking to me, no matter what it is, my deep inner psyche, and I didn't even know how to do this, right? Someone had it done to me, and they were like, okay, let me show you this quick test. There's no way to fake this, right? So my iris, the brown of my eyes, is always visible. So it's like in the left side there. And so I could not be hypnotizable. So when they have people come up on a stage and they do this test to see how hypnotizable you are, those that are hypnotizable are more on the right. Their eye actually rolls back to the head a little bit. So it's just white. It's just sclera. So most people are actually hypnotizable. There's a lot of people that are hypnotizable. And I'm going to go into the NPC theory later, but I believe a lot of these people are just not humans, right? Like, it's a pretty dangerous idea. We're going to get into the NPC thing, but there are a large quantity of people who are just not real. And I think one of the key tests to see how suggestible you are is with this eye roll test. So you'll notice a lot of people just, even with their thoughts, with their ideologies, they don't question anything. They're given scripts. Again, this is not ethical. Don't do this. You need a license. But practicing hypnotherapy with people who give you consent and just realizing how fucking malleable people are is very alarming. So let's dig into that concept there, the paradigms that we are given and adopted. So paradigms are like mental frameworks, are like ideologies, right? People are born into paradigms. In their culture, in their families, in their geography, people are given paradigms. There's different paradigms. They need to digest several. But then when you're 4 years old, if you're not fully socialized by the time you're 4 years old, you are going to struggle. And so a lot of people psychologically do not graduate from their childhood paradigms. A lot of people don't question anything. So what happens when you hypnotize an entire generation of people? You get billions of people with unquestionable ideas. There's certain things that one should just not question. For instance, that's why I love the flat earth thing so much. Now, I personally believe the earth is round. I think it's spherical. But why? I actually love the whole moment when the internet was talking about this, because for the first time in a long time, people had to actually sit outside and observe shadows, for instance. Oh, I believe the earth is round because if I take this stick in my backyard and I look at a tree, for instance, I can see the shadow move around it, right? And people were talking about stars. People are actually they're actually getting inductive reasoning done and deductive reasoning. They were doing both. For the first time in a long time, many people were starting to question things. That's why, like, the time from Columbus, like, people weren't questioning this for almost 500 years. Are you kidding me? Like, we need to start questioning things. And you'll notice that the great majority of people, they are given their paradigms and they don't question it ever. And I think that's a sickness, because if we don't question the flat earth thing, which I think is healthy to do, you should question it, because if you truly believe the earth is round, then you should happily accept the challenge and prove why it's round. You should do the same thing with everything else. Everything is open to debate. Everything is open to questioning. That is what a healthy world should look like. But again, when you start questioning things, you can sometimes reveal that certain trusted paradigms are wrong, and that is too uncomfortable for most people, and so they just don't engage, they don't do it. So now, how can one develop into a person who is capable of asking such questions in a healthy way and becoming someone who has perceptual mastery? Well, the first step is to develop presence or awareness. So let's talk about how to build that presence. The first thing we need to recognize is that our brains are deeply flawed. Your entire reality is based on this 3-pound organ that is in the middle of your head. If there's any like chemical alterations, physical alterations, you will literally start seeing a dragon in your room and things that aren't there. Like your entire reality is based on this little mushy organ in the middle of your head. It weighs like 3 pounds, right? So there's certain things that our brain does to protect us and it tricks us. One of which is called the reticular activating system. A lot of people, they simply do not see the same things you see. People live in completely different realities at the same time. They're just stacked on each other. What do I mean by that? Say you are a young couple, right? And you are looking to have kids and you finally get your girl pregnant. Then you'll slowly start to recognize, oh, our neighbor was pregnant this whole time? What? Oh, she's pregnant there. You go to a cafe, you go to a restaurant, you see like 5 pregnant people there. You start noticing all these pregnant people all over the place. The question is, were they always there? Maybe yes, maybe no. Now, the reticular activating system, the theory goes, and they tested this, is that all that stuff was always there, but it only became apparent to you, visible to you, because it became important to you. So your reality is determined by your paradigms, what is important to you, because if it's not important to you, it will literally cease to exist. You will not see it. So when you start developing a awareness practice such as meditation, which is incredibly powerful, you start to notice the little things. Life is just the present moment. And so if you can really build the awareness muscle where you can notice the little things like the wind on the hairs of your arms, the smells when you're walking through the street, all that soft stuff is what makes life life. And just like in wealth mastery, if you cannot appreciate $1, you won't get to 100, and then you won't get to 1,000,000. And so I'm actually really obsessed with C.S. Lewis. He wrote the Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland is a fantastic story. Now, this is actually from The Looking Glass. It's a separate book, but Alice speaks to the live flowers. So the live flowers are these flowers that talk, right? When they see Alice, they mistake her for some type of flower that can move. And instead of recognizing that she is wearing a dress, the flowers think that her petals are fading and falling down around her ankles. So this misidentification reminds us of the narrowness of our perspectives as humans and the ways in which they limit how we see the world. Different paradigms, different worlds. People literally can have the 2 exact same stimuli and see 2 completely different things. So if you build your awareness, you start seeing through the people into other realities. You can start seeing different worlds stacked on top of each other. So that's why it's so powerful to build a meditation practice. The next type of practice, which is extremely powerful that I just started doing last August, is a synchronicity journal. So this is an idea I got from Will Coomer, who is actually a member of our community here. And the more you notice synchronicities or deja vus or, synchronicities. And synchronicity is defined as an occurrence of meaningful coincidences that seem to have no cause, but the underlying idea is that there's a unity in all this diversity. So when you start noticing all these coincidences, all these synchronicities, write them down. The more you notice them, the more they will seem to appear because of the reticular activating system. Perhaps they were already there, but you weren't appreciating them. God or the universe, whatever you want to call it, only allows you to graduate to bigger and better things once you've appreciated the smaller things. If you don't learn your smaller lessons, you're doomed to repeat them until you do. So this synchronicity journal is an exercise in building that awareness. Here's some pictures of my actual synchronicity journal. It doesn't have to be big. This is really small. I keep it in my back pocket when I walk around. Now, synchronicities are somewhat tied to deja vus. Now, deja vus present a question that has been asked since the beginning of time. So the Greeks, they actually were talking and discussing and debating whether we are agents with free will or determinism, like everything's predetermined for us. I personally believe it's a blend of both. It's like these connected dots. If you ever played connected dots, I believe there are certain events that are the dots that are set in stone. Like you're supposed to get that job. You're supposed to meet that girl. You're supposed to move to that city. But the way you get between those 2 dots, that is completely up to you. It might take you a month. It might take you a year. But there are certain dots you have to hit. And so that's how I see it. All your life is a mix of these predetermined dots and then your free will to how to get there. We're going to get into simulation theory in the next slide, but I believe that we are in a simulation, and people don't like that word because it's very video gamey, but people have been talking this way forever. If you look at the Greeks, it's the allegory of the cave. Like there's different, it doesn't matter how you want to phrase it, but we, I believe, are being played by something greater than ourselves, a different dimension. In Christianity, we believe that we have a soul running our body right now, right? There's different ways to phrase it, but I believe that before we got to live in this reality, in this life, we were shown some sort of trailer, like a movie, right? Like a video game movie or a TV movie. We were shown some trailer of the life this avatar was going to live. And so those dots that we see, those deja vu dots, are those short scenes from that trailer. So when you finally get to that point and you see that moment in time in real life, it's a weird feeling because you've seen it before. You've seen it before. So that's the way I conceptualize deja vus. So when you notice these, write those down in your synchronicity journal. Once you start piling these together, you'll start to notice, oh, this is a cowboy movie, or this is a entrepreneur's journey. Like you start seeing who you're supposed to be, because you can get lost between point A and point B. You can get there how many ways you want. Some people get completely lost, right? But if you can identify those dots, those moments of deja vu, those moments of synchronicity, those are the moments that actually define you, because those were in your trailer. Like if you can collect a notebook that has all of those together, you can see the bigger picture. Oh, I'm supposed to be X or Y type person. Like this is who I'm actually supposed to be. So keep those in mind. And that is a quick hack to seeing who you're actually meant to be. Now, what actually happens when you meditate? When you meditate, you are doing something completely abnormal because you are a monkey. You are an animal. And you are designed to respond to stimulus. So it's completely abnormal to force yourself to sit down and be still. Our body knows it can't come with us into the spiritual realm in the afterlife. And so it does not care about its physical cravings being bad for you. So if you start itching, right? Or if you want to eat something that's completely bad for you, like very unhealthy, or if you want to smoke, or if you want to do all kinds of bad things, it is the physical cravings. It is the physical body that knows it has a limited time doing that. It's talking to you in that way. It's speaking that language because it doesn't care about the goodness and the well-being of your soul. So it doesn't care because it knows it's going to end here in this life, in this realm. So the more you ignore those physical cravings, the more power you're going to start building. I'm telling you, the spiritual perceptual power you start building and the awareness you start building once you can start saying no to your body is phenomenal. It is like a fucking superpower. If you can force your body to be a slave to your soul, then life literally becomes a game. The final section here is a bit controversial, but we're going to talk about NPCs and NPC theory. Now, technically speaking, NPCs or non-playable characters, this is a concept that has been played out for a long time, but this language, this term NPCs just came out within the last few years, but it comes from video games. So when you're playing in a video game, a first-person game, you can come across certain characters that they just have a predetermined list of dialogue. They can only say certain things. They can only do certain things. They're very limited life, right? They don't question things. They're not novel things. Now, I personally believe there are NPCs on this planet and this reality, but I do recognize that it's very dangerous to think about people this way because what you're effectively saying is that there are people who are not real. There are people who are expendable. There are people who are not people. And so once you do adopt that idea, it becomes much easier to get rid of people if you want to. Like if there was to be some NPC test, which we do have in the next few slides, you can effectively get rid of people, right? But this is amoral, dangerous. You do not want to start thinking about people this way. But regardless, I believe there's a huge amount of people who are NPCs. We'll get in the next slide how to identify these people and how to avoid becoming one. Because I actually believe that being an NPC is the default setting because the game has to run. It's like the Sims game or GTA, whatever. Like you have to have things going on in the background because people are joining in live all the time. From the year 2083 or whatever, people are joining into this virtual realm. They're joining into this reality, right? And so you have to have people already running in the background. So I believe everyone, me included, we all started as NPCs. I could be a 14-year-old girl in Korea in the year 2080, or I could be a 50-year-old Russian oligarch in the year 2060. I don't know who I am right now. But when they logged into my Mateo character, I gained consciousness when I was 2 years old. Like that, I remember my first memories, right? And so I believe those first 2 years, those are just NPC movement, whatever. It might not have even been coded yet, but everyone, I believe, as a default, is an NPC. And also, I believe some people can just check out. If the game gets too boring, whatever, people just leave. So I believe there are certain people who can become NPCs through their actions by doing things that are just boring. If the game just gets too hard, if they can't level up, a lot of people quit. So you'll notice a lot of people who were your boys, they just become NPCs too, right? Like they're a person who's playing as their avatar, they just quit. So I believe that you have to avoid becoming an NPC. One of the best ways to avoid becoming an NPC is to identify what makes an NPC. So how do you identify an NPC? The defining feature of an NPC is their predictability. Their code has limits. These are people who talk to you about the same thing over and over again. They never deviate off script. They have simple and repetitive actions, and they avoid resistance. They always take the same path every day. Over 90% of the day is the exact same thing. All of their actions are reactive. They never do anything novel. Everything's reactive, both their actions and their thoughts. It's all reactive. Oh, what are we mad about today in Twitter? Oh, what are we like? They're just reactive, right? This is the overwhelming majority of people out there. So in the next module, we're going to talk about the simulation theory and how to break that down and understand it and take advantage of it. But just to remind people of the allegory of the cave, which is made popular by Plato, he gave us the thought experiment of imagine a few people in a cave where they're chained so they can only see the wall of the cave. They can't see outside. And there's light coming in. And so every day they can see shadows, like little bird shadow figures or like dog figures. They can see animal figures onto the wall. And so these people who were born into this situation, they don't know anything else. They believe that these shadow figures are real. They believe that this is an actual bird, this is an actual dog. The story goes that if someone were to break free from their chains and escape and go outside of the cave and realize that these are just like people making the little shadow figures and that there's a world outside with the rivers and cities and all that, that it'll be so overwhelming, so detrimental to their identity and their paradigm that they will literally choose to return to the cave and chain themselves back up. That's not far from our reality. How many times have you shown certain people evidence for certain things and they just will not accept it? But after studying psychology, you need to understand that people will always choose to discredit that which shatters their beliefs, especially those tied to their identity. It's self-protective, it's self-preserving. It's very easy to label someone as crazy when they're not. It's easy to dismiss something because it's uncomfortable. The whole concept of you not being you is very uncomfortable to people. And so this perceptual mastery module, this whole section is not meant to just be like some weird schizo rant and like shake people up for no reason. But we're actually going to leverage this moment. We're going to leverage these glitches to do something with our lives, to make something of ourselves, to not be an NPC and take advantage of the avatar you're living in now. So let's get into your homework and do just that. So this module is actually very short and sweet because I want you to take action on it now. Like this is super powerful. It has the most ROI. And I can't thank my boy Will Coomer enough because I've seen so much crazy coincidences because of this. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to the dollar store or any kind of small store and you're going to buy a small pocket-sized notebook. This is going to serve as your synchronicity journal. And you're going to carry it with you for at least a month, at least 30 days. You're going to have it near you at all times. Make sure it's accessible. And every single time you notice a synchronicity, write it down. So have it very accessible. Put it in your car, put it in your backpack, put it in your pocket, put it in your desk, like some place where you spend a lot of time, and just write down the synchronicities as they show up. So this is a super powerful exercise. You'll notice things that you probably were not noticing before, that they were always there. But this is one of the best things one can do to build that awareness muscle. Also, you should get into meditation. I didn't include that here. I believe that that should already be part of someone's routine. People can pray as well. We talked about that in the spiritual modules, like prayer, meditation. You need to connect to the frequency. And I don't want to sound like a hippie at all, but you should connect to the higher levels out there. So prayer, meditation, that's something you should do. But for this one, I didn't want to distract anyone. Focus on getting a synchronicity journal and contributing to it because it changes your life. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one.